Hello everyone, today I want to talk about a very important mechanic in Guilty Gear, but one that I've noticed a lot of players don't understand very well, and that is of course going to be Faultless Defense, or FD for short. FD is such an integral mechanic to Guilty Gear, as this is a series that is known for having very strong offense, so knowing how to use your defensive options is going to be key for dealing with that offense, and FD just happens to be the most important defensive mechanic. But despite that importance, it's one that I find a lot of players don't really understand how to use very well, and there's also not a lot of discussion about how to use it very well. Just for reference, I'm someone that has done a lot of coaching lessons for this game, which, by the way, if that's something you'd be interested in, you can find a link to my coaching lessons down below in the description. But one of the most common things I have to go over with all the players that I've helped is actually talking about how FD works and how to take better advantage of it. So that's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about how FD works as a mechanic, what does it do for you, as well as giving you some actual examples of how to use the mechanic better. Before we get into it though, if you guys do enjoy this video and you find it helpful, please let me know down in the comments below. One of the hardest parts about being a content creator is it can be hard to tell sometimes if a video is actually helpful or if people are enjoying it. So if you guys do enjoy this type of video, or if there's other videos like this that you'd like to see me do, please let me know down in the comments below. It'd be a ton of help. While you're down there, consider dropping a like as well as subbing to the channel. Likes and comments really help the YouTube algorithm. It's one of the easiest ways to help me out if you want to show some support. And I'm getting very close to 9,000 subs on YouTube, so I'd really like to get that before the year is over. And of course, you want to be subbed, that way you don't miss out on our future videos. Anyways, with that out of the way, let's get into talking about things. So the first thing that we should go over is how FD works in the first place. So of course there are going to be two input methods for FD. The first one is by pressing any two buttons together except for the D button while holding a backwards direction. You'll know that you're FDing by the green bubble around your character. The other way is going to be by going into your button settings and setting the Faultless Defense macro to one of the buttons on your controller. This is the recommended way of doing it. It's not what I do. Don't do what I do. If you have room on your controller, it is better to use the FD macro. But in either case, whatever you're comfortable with will work perfectly fine, so don't worry too much about it. FDing is going to give us 3 advantages, and the primary one that we're going to be talking about in this video is going to be the increased pushback on block while using FD. So right here I have Kai doing run up close slash into 5H, and I just normal blocked it. And this time he's going to do the same thing, but I'm going to hold FD. And as you'll notice, Kai is actually quite a bit further back than he was when we didn't FD. And in a game like Guilty Gear especially, increasing pushback like this is very, very valuable, and there are so many situations, more than you would ever imagine, frankly, that are changed drastically just by FDing a move or two. The other two advantages, and these ones are a little bit less important, but still valuable, are going to be the fact that while FDing, it will negate chip damage as well as risk gain. So I'm going to have Kai throw a Sun Edge here, and we're going to block it. As you can see, I gained a little bit of risk and took a little bit of chip damage. But if we FD it, it will negate both of those things. So this can obviously be valuable if you're blocking a move that does a lot of chip damage, or, you know, if you want to keep your risk down, that way if you do inevitably get hit, which you're probably going to at some point, it's Guilty Gear, you won't take as much damage because your risk won't be as high. Those are going to be more passive advantages to using FD, and while they are beneficial, I want to spend more time talking about the pushback adjustments on FD. Now we can get into talking about some examples of how to use FD effectively. So an important thing to realize about Guilty Gear is that this is a game where offense is mostly comprised of Gatlings, so essentially the ability to cancel like our close slash into our far slash into our 5H. We use these Gatlings, or specifically delayed Gatlings, to create frame traps in our pressure that force players to have to respect us and sit still. That way we can represent strike throw offense. Most characters across Guilty Gear are going to be strike throw based characters, so this applies to most of the cast. So right here I have Kai set to do just that. He's doing close slash far slash 5H. And importantly, I'm having him delay it, so if I mash at any point in this pressure, I'm going to get counter hit. Same for if we try to hold up, it's going to frame trap our jump startup. Basically, we have to block it. However, there's one exception. So as you notice here, if we just block it normally, nothing crazy is going on here. Kai's just going to space himself out, and we're not really going to be able to do anything about it. But if we use FD, what's going to happen is that Kai's 5H is going to end up whiffing at the end of the block string. This is very valuable because at minimum, you can just kind of use this as an opportunity to, you know, like escape Kai's pressure and back off if you just want to go back to neutral. But more importantly, if this is something that you're actively looking for, which as you use the mechanic more, you'll get better at doing this, you'll actually notice and be able to take advantage of moments like this and use them as an opportunity to even get a whiff punish and start your own offense. The important thing here as well is that FD is a mechanic that is kind of difficult to recognize when someone is using FD, and a lot of players frankly just don't even lab their offense to deal with FD in the first place. So you can get a lot of mileage out of usage like this, where once you know the opponent's character well enough, you can start getting a lot of offense started just by using FD in this way. So let's go through some other characters and give some other examples like this. Here we have an example using Nago. So I'm going to have Nago doing close slash, far slash slash into command grab. And this is normally a very threatening situation because you either have to respect the command grab or you have to respect him doing a frame trap with his DP special or just by finishing the far slash series. And the important thing here is that if I try to mash, assuming it's going to be a command grab, the DP will be a frame trap. So essentially, if you're not doing anything special, this is just a 50-50 every time that you block it, which is not good for you. You don't want to do that. However, if we just simply know to FD the second hit of this far slash, in most cases, the command grab will actually just whiff. You don't even have to worry about the command grab reaching you. So this is very, very valuable and just drastically changes the situation just simply by FDing one move. All you have to FD is a second hit of far slash, and this 50-50 situation turns into just kind of a normal pressure situation. You don't have to worry nearly as much. Next up, we have an example using Anji, and this one's actually going to be kind of similar to the Kai one, but there are some key differences, so stick with me. So once again, we have Anji, and he's going to be set to do run up close slash 2S 5H into Fujin. So Anji really likes to use Fujin in his pressure because from Fujin, he has access to an overhead, he has access to a low hitting move, as well as some other follow-ups. It's pretty much his primary mix-up tool in his offense. However, Fujin is actually technically punishable on block so long as you're within range. So the important thing here is that Anji players like doing this block string specifically because it puts Anji at a range where most characters are not going to be able to punish. Ram is one of the best characters in the game at punishing this move on block, and even in this example, I'm not in range to punish with either of my K button. However, just like Kai, if we actually take advantage of FD, we're going to make a situation where his 5H will end up whiffing in his pressure. And in this example, we don't even need to FD both buttons. We can FD just the close slash, and then the 5H will still whiff, even though we only FD'd one of the two buttons beforehand. So now I'm going to have Anji set to do close slash 2S and go directly into Fujin from there. So if he just skips doing the 5H, he doesn't run the risk of having his 5H whiff, and he can just go right into the Fujin from the 2S instead. But the downside here is that if he's doing that, he's actually leaving himself closer to us, meaning that we can more consistently punish the Fujin on block. With that said, you also need to be careful because this is an example of a move that you don't want to FD, because if you continue to hold FD, it's actually just going to push him to a range where, once again, you're not actually able to punish it. So there are examples of moves where it is actively detrimental to you to be FDing them. This mostly applies to moves that are punishable on block. Some moves are usually like -7 and up. Those are generally going to be moves that you don't want to FD because usually you want to keep the opponent closer. That way you can try to take advantage of the minus frames. So with Anji, the general rule is that you want to try to FD the normals, but then not FD the special moves. That way you can take advantage and try to punish. Of course, there's RPS after Fujin. You know, you can do frame traps and all of that. But that RPS isn't even available to you if you don't keep him close enough to you in the first place. So those are just a couple of general examples of how you can use FD to create whiffs. And to be honest, I could probably come up with 1 or 2 examples for like every character in the game, but we don't have time to do that. This just to give you some ideas of things to go check out in your own matchups. The next thing that I want to talk about is how FD directly affects how players are able to run strike throw offense in this game. And like I said, most characters kind of fall under running strike throw offense. So this is very valuable. Just as an example, I have Kai doing run up close slash into throw here. And this is something that basically every character is going to do. You know, every character is going to tick throw you in this game, especially after a close slash, because most close slashes are plus on block. And the important thing here is that this situation is very fast. We don't actually have any amount of time to delay a defensive option. I pretty much had to mash 5P there immediately if I wanted to try to beat a run up throw attempt. If I delay it even slightly, it's going to be too late. I tried to hit 5P there, but we ended up getting thrown anyways. So we don't have the luxury of time in this situation. And this is a problem because if we have Kai instead do close slash into a 2S instead, this is going to frame trap us, right? So whether we are jumping or backdashing or mashing, whatever we're doing, we're probably going to get hit for it because of the frame trap. And this is a big problem because it basically means every time you're in this situation, you're getting 50-50. And you don't want to get 50-50 that often. So if I just FD Kai doing close slash and a run up throw, in most cases with the recording that we have right now anyways, he's going to end up whiffing the throw, which might happen sometimes in matches. But more importantly, what it's going to actually do for us is it means that Kai has to run a further distance if he wants to actually be able to throw us. So now I have Kai doing close slash into a more prolonged run into throw. So if I actually hold FD here, he's still going to throw us anyways. But this is important because now I can actually delay my mash option and it will still be him doing run up throw, just like that. And once again, if I use that kind of same timing and we go back to the 2S recording, I'm not going to get frame trapped anymore, because he has to 2S us earlier if he wants to frame trap in immediate timing, whereas we're not mashing at an immediate timing anymore. Of course, he can try to call out this timing with his frame trap, so if we have Kai doing a more delayed 2S and I try to delay my 5P input, it's going to counter hit us naturally. However, the advantage here is that if he is trying to target this delayed mash attempt or any delayed defensive option, then that means mashing immediately, probably not with 5P because it doesn't have much range. If I mash with something like a 2K or whatever, it's going to interrupt him because he's targeting a later timing and we're mashing immediately. So just by FDing that one close slash, it gives us even just a few more frames to work with defensively, which opens up an entire new avenue of options because Kai now has to account for different defensive timings. Oftentimes in fighting games, it's not just about what options you choose, it's about when you choose them. And FD gives us not just the luxury of more options, it gives us the luxury of more timings to represent those options with. One last example that I want to go over real quick is going to be talking about instant block faultless defense, or IBFD. I do have an entire video talking about IBs and IBFDs on my channel as well, so if you want to get more into the nitty gritty of this topic, you can go watch that video. I do want to talk about this real quick because some people are probably going to be wondering about it. IBFD is a very, very powerful mechanic, and if you could do it consistently, it would actually be absurdly powerful. However, because it's a 2-frame window, it is actually really hard to IBFD consistently. But there are plenty of examples of things where just FDing them maybe isn't that impactful, but if you can IBFD them, you can make a big difference. So with Chip here, I have him just set to do close slash 2S into 2H. And on normal block, it will reach us, and even if I FD the entire string, all of it will reach us. However, if I manage to IBFD even just one of the attacks, if I try to IB to 2S, as you can see there, ended up whiffing. So there are tons of things where, yeah, if you could IBFD them consistently, you could create even more situations to, kind of create openings for yourself. But the mechanic is pretty hard to take advantage of, especially because you can delay things in this game. You know, you can delay your Gatlings, you can delay your special cancels, all that stuff. So because of that, it's actually kind of hard to take advantage of. And I don't think this should necessarily discourage you from trying. Just know that it will be difficult to actually IBFD. However, very importantly, I don't think IBFD is nearly as required as FDing is. I think FDing is literally essential to the game. If you don't FD, you're probably just not going to beat some characters. Whereas IBFD is a very nice bonus, and I would say is probably necessary in some situations at the highest level. But for most players, it's something you don't have to worry about. It's something you can definitely just work in when you feel like it. The last thing that I want to talk about, and I've been waiting to talk about this because I think it is important, is the fact that FD obviously isn't free. So if you're using FD, it will cost you your tension gauge down at the bottom left. And tension is super duper valuable in this game. It's one of the most powerful resources in the entire match. Having access to Roman cancels and supers is actually game changing. So a lot of the time there are players that I am talking to about FD and they're constantly worried about wasting their meter. Very often I have players asking me, when should I be using FD, and like, is it worth wasting my meter to FD in this situation, yada yada yada. My biggest advice when it comes to FDing is just use the mechanic. Just use FD a lot. It's fine. I know it costs tension, but I think FD is a mechanic where it is better to use it a lot to get an idea of when maybe you shouldn't be using it, as opposed to reverse. If you're not using FD very much, it's going to be a lot harder to tell situations where FDing could make a difference for you. Whereas if you're using it a ton, you'll probably start noticing situations where it's like, wow, if I use FD here, the entire block string still connects, so it doesn't really even matter that I'm FDing it. I think players often get too caught up in worrying about correct use with FD, either, not wanting to waste their meter or just not being sure what it does for you. But I really think you should just use the mechanic a ton and try to pay attention to situations where maybe it's doing something for you. If you notice something in your opponent's offense whiffs, it was probably because you were FDing. And like I said, FD is a mechanic where you could find so many different uses for it, whether we're talking about just FD or IBFD or any of it. There are so many different matchups where you can talk about situations where it can be beneficial. Again, we don't have time to go over all of them today, but hopefully after just these examples and some of the things I mentioned, it gives you kind of the stepping stones to figuring out how to use FD for yourself, as FD is definitely a mechanic that really benefits players who research the game and research how their opponent's offense works. But that's going to do it for me. I think that's all I got to say on the topic. Thank you all very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.